to respond to the debate.
First of all, Chairman and delegates, I want to thank very much everybody who's contributed to the debate tonight. Karen spoke on motion on the first motion before us, motion number 10, and I want to support that motion. I particularly want to support the composite in relation to CE schemes. CE schemes are incredibly valuable. Social welfare spending in the economy is a critical part of economic stimulus, particularly in a time of recession. But I will say, and I want to thank Deputies Conaghan and Humphreys and Pat O'Hora from Galway East for laying out the human and the social and community dimension of CE schemes, which are so important. And I want to say I want to work, with people to actually reform, maintain and expand ultimately CE, because we have 1,400 CE supervisors employed in this country. We have 23,000 people roughly on schemes, and I recognise the social delivery, whether to older people, Meals on Wheels, care services, whether to schools and community centres, as Michael Conaghan spoke about, whether in terms of lone parents, as Deputy Humphreys spoke about. The biggest reform of social welfare, or one of them, in a very long period of time, has been the fact that that the Labour Services side of FOSS has come into the department, and we will work to reform and expand CE and other job support schemes. So I support composite number 1. In relation to self-employed people, the motion was moved by our friends from Limerick, by Jerry Burke. Absolutely. So many young people who will leave school now. At some stage in their life they may be employees, they may be employers, they may be self-employed. We can't really build a new social welfare system unless we find space and the funding, because it will have to be paid for, to ensure that self-employed people have and can contribute to social welfare, so that they have an entitlement should they become unemployed or fall ill. Now, that's an expensive thing to do, but I'm having it examined at the moment, and I think it's something we should proceed to do. Think of all the people in the construction industry who became self-employed during the boom. In many cases, they didn't particularly wish to become self-employed, but the structures of their industry had changed to the extent that that was the only option that was open to them. So I very much support that. And the advisory group on tax and social welfare, I have asked them to actively examine how we can build that and fund that option. In relation to JobsBridge, just let me say, since we launched JobsBridge 9 months ago, 6,000 people have gone on JobsBridge, and about 9,000 employers have offered employment in the public, in the private, in the community sector to people looking for experience, because in the current recession people often can't get their foot on the ladder because they can't get a job without experience, and they can't get experience unless they can get some kind of a job. And I accept what Paula was saying, that we have to be extremely vigilant that the experience of the intern is a quality experience that helps them to get on. And I'm happy to say that so far the scheme has been working relatively well, and we will be carrying out a continuous evaluation of the experience of people on JobsBridge. And I know the motion as such is withdrawn, but I want to thank Paula for her comments. On motion 16 from the Trade Union Group, as proposed by Adrian Kane, I think it would be best to, I'd like to ask the Trade Union Group if they would refer this back. We are publishing a detailed study in June on the Social Insurance Fund, because the essential issue in relation to social insurance is that the fund, in other words, all of the contributions compared with all of the payouts, there's an actual deficit of £1.5 billion. And one of the things we have to do if we're to improve and afford sustainable pensions is that we have to look at the structure of the fund. We had a very successful seminar on social welfare reform a couple of weeks ago with over 250 people present. I said to the people who were there that I want to run the next seminar on the detail of pensions, and I'd asked the Labour Trade Union Group if they would agree to have discussions in detail on further reforms in relation to pensions, both social welfare, contributory, non-contributory pensions, and also defined benefits. So I'd ask the group if they would refer this back. In relation to number 17, the programme for government, per the amendment, suggests that the state would not subsidise, whether in the public or private sector, pensions in excess of £60,000 a year. I suggest that the amendment would be accepted. I don't accept the principle of motion number 17. It's a breach of existing pension, legal and contractual pension entitlements. The mechanism in the programme for government to cap the state contribution to both public and private pensions, in my view, is the best way to achieve a fair, reformed pension system. I want to thank Deirdre O'Byrne and Louise in relation to their contribution on transgender. As Minister, I've published the transgender report, and I want to say I want to again have a very detailed dialogue. I think the Dáil Committee needs to have a very detailed dialogue with the points that were raised in relation to transgender people. I've asked the Attorney General for advice in relation to this requirement, which is a WHO requirement, of people being required to be diagnosed with a mental condition. I think, in this day and age, that wording is deeply unacceptable, and I understand why it's unacceptable to people of transgender. So I accept the motion. On lone parents, again, I want to accept the motion. And in relation to basic income, I suggest that be referred back. Basic income has been, if you like, examined over the last 25 years. The difficulty is that, except in the case of children and retired people, we do not have the resources as a state to fund the kind of basic income system that is proposed here. I wish we had, but we don't, and I suggest that this will be referred back as part of the wider discussion. I recognise what Senator John Kelly was saying about seeking to give employment subsidies to employers. We're doing that at the moment in the Department of Social Protection in relation to, for instance, people with a disability. There is a work subsidy scheme to subsidise wages. And again, perhaps Senator Kelly might refer that back, or the Balladreen branch might refer that back, so that we can see how the new scheme in relation to partial capacity benefit that I launched a couple of months ago, and the wage subsidy scheme, how that works out, and take it forward for further discussion and examination. I agree with everything that has been said by our colleague from Duleek, that we need to have interagency cooperation particularly between the Revenue Commissioners and social welfare inspectors, to ensure that we do reduce and eliminate fraud. And in the Social Welfare Bill, which will come before the Dáil in the next fortnight, I will be looking for enhanced powers for social welfare inspectors to actually be able to get information from landlords, which I hope will help to ensure compliance in relation to landlords who are in receipt of rent allowances for properties that they're renting to people on social welfare. Thank you, delegates.